Amanda Thompson entered the Norby Gallery with soft steps, her eyes scanning the artworks hanging on the pristine white walls. The air conditioning hummed gently, creating an atmosphere of calm that contrasted with the summer heat of Sacramento outside. She breathed deeply, inhaling the characteristic scent of fresh paint and polished wood. The paintings and sculptures seemed to speak to her, each telling a unique story. Amanda had always had a passion for art, seeing it as a powerful form of expression and social change. As an activist, she believed that art could be a tool to give voice to the silenced and illuminate the injustices of the world. As she walked through the gallery, Amanda reflected on her own work as an activist. She had dedicated years of her life fighting against discrimination and inequality in Sacramento. Her thoughts wandered to the community projects she had led, the demonstrations she had organized, and the lives she had touched along the way. This moment in the gallery was a well-deserved break, a chance to reconnect with the beauty and inspiration that fueled her passion. Amanda stopped in front of a particularly striking painting. It was a large canvas, dominated by shades of red and black, with violent brushstrokes that seemed to scream in anguish. At the center of the work, a solitary figure stood out, its arms raised in a gesture of defiance or supplication. The piece touched her deeply, echoing the struggles she saw daily in her work. As she leaned in to examine the details of the painting, a harsh voice cut through the silence of the gallery. "Excuse me, ma'am." Amanda turned to see a security guard, his name tag reading Mark, approaching her with a stern expression. His eyes darted suspiciously between her face and her handbag. "I need you to open your bag," Mark demanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. Amanda looked around, noticing other visitors passing by without being bothered. A sinking feeling settled in her stomach as she realized what was happening. "Is there a problem?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady despite the rising indignation she felt. Mark's eyes narrowed. "Just routine security check, ma'am. Open your bag, please." With trembling hands, Amanda complied, acutely aware of the stares from nearby visitors. As Mark rummaged through her belongings, she felt a mix of humiliation and anger washing over her. This wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a blatant act of discrimination. As Mark finished his inspection and walked away without so much as an apology, Amanda stood rooted to the spot, her mind reeling. The beautiful artworks around her now seemed to mock her, their colors blurring as tears threatened to form in her eyes. In that moment, something shifted within Amanda. The injustice she had just experienced wasn't something she could let slide. It was a stark reminder that despite all the progress made, discrimination still lurked in the most unexpected places. As she gathered her composure and made her way out of the gallery, a determination took hold. This incident wouldn't be forgotten or brushed aside. It was time to take action, to use her voice and her platform to shed light on this persistent issue. Amanda stepped out into the Sacramento sun, the warmth on her skin a sharp contrast to the cold treatment she had just received. As she walked away from the Norby Gallery, her mind was already formulating a plan. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every person who had ever been unfairly targeted or made to feel unwelcome in spaces that should be open to all. The fight for justice was far from over, and Amanda Thompson was ready to take it head-on. The bell above the cafe door chimed as Amanda pushed it open, her eyes scanning the cozy interior for a familiar face. She spotted Lena, her longtime friend and fellow activist, waving from a corner table. Amanda made her way over, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee momentarily distracting her from the turmoil of emotions still swirling inside her. "Hey, you look like you've seen a ghost," Lena said as Amanda slumped into the chair opposite her. "What happened?" Amanda took a deep breath and recounted the incident at the Norby Gallery. As she spoke, her voice trembled with a mixture of anger and hurt. Lena listened intently, her brow furrowing with each detail. "I can't believe this still happens," Lena said, shaking her head. "Actually, scratch that. I can believe it, and that's the problem." Amanda nodded, wrapping her hands around the warm mug of coffee that had appeared in front of her. "I know. I've heard stories, but experiencing it firsthand, it's different. It's like a slap in the face, a reminder that no matter how far we think we've come, there's still so much work to do." Lena leaned forward, her eyes blazing with a familiar intensity. "You know, something similar happened to me last month at that new boutique downtown. The clerk followed me around the entire time, like I was going to stuff a dress in my purse or something." As Lena shared her experience, Amanda felt a surge of solidarity and determination. These weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a larger, systemic problem that needed to be addressed. "We can't let this keep happening," Amanda said, her voice gaining strength. "We need to do something, Lena. We need to make our voices heard." Lena nodded enthusiastically. "You're right. But how? What's the plan?" Amanda's mind raced with possibilities. "A press conference," she said finally. "We'll call attention to what happened at the gallery, but also to the broader issue. We'll demand changes in their policies, sensitivity training for their staff, and we'll invite others to share their stories too." "That's brilliant," Lena said, her eyes lighting up. "We can reach out to local media, get some of our activist networks involved. This could be the start of something big, Amanda." As they continued to plan, Amanda felt a renewed sense of purpose. The humiliation she had felt in the gallery was transforming into fuel for action. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with Lena by her side and the support of their community, she felt ready to take on the challenge. "We're going to need legal advice," Amanda mused, making a mental note. "I'll reach out to Dr. Benjamin. He's always been supportive of our causes." Lena nodded in agreement. "Good thinking. We need to make sure we're on solid ground legally." As they finished their coffee and prepared to leave, Amanda felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. The incident at the gallery had been painful, but it had also ignited a spark. She was no longer just Amanda Thompson, the respected activist. She was now Amanda Thompson, the woman who was going to turn her personal experience of injustice into a movement for change. "Ready for this?" Lena asked as they stood up. Amanda squared her shoulders and nodded. "More than ready. It's time to fight back." As they stepped out of the cafe and into the bustling streets of Sacramento, Amanda felt a renewed sense of purpose. The press conference would be just the beginning. She was prepared to use every tool at her disposal, her voice, her network, her experience, to shine a light on the discrimination that still lurked in the shadows of their society. The battle against injustice was far from over, but Amanda Thompson was ready to lead the charge. The day of the press conference arrived with a mix of nervous energy and determination. Amanda stood behind the makeshift podium, her hands gripping its edges as she surveyed the crowd gathered before her. Local reporters, community activists, and curious onlookers filled the small park across from the Norby Gallery, their faces a blend of anticipation and support. Lena stood to her left, offering a reassuring smile, while Dr. Benjamin, their legal counsel, stood to her right, his presence lending an air of authority to the proceedings. The warm Sacramento sun beat down on them, but Amanda barely noticed, her focus entirely on the task at hand. Taking a deep breath, Amanda stepped up to the microphone. "Thank you all for coming today," she began, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "We're here to address an incident of discrimination that occurred at the Norby Gallery, but more importantly, to shine a light on a problem that persists in our society." As Amanda recounted her experience, she could see the shock and empathy on the faces of those gathered. She spoke not just of her personal humiliation, but of the broader implications of such actions. "This isn't just about one security guard or one gallery," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "It's about a system that allows these prejudices to persist, that turns a blind eye to the subtle, and not so subtle, ways in which people are made to feel unwelcome or suspicious based solely on their appearance." Amanda outlined their demands: a formal apology from the gallery, mandatory sensitivity training for all staff, and a commitment to diversify both their workforce and the artists they showcase. But she didn't stop there. "We're calling on all cultural institutions in Sacramento to examine their practices," she declared. "Art should be a unifying force, a means of expression for all. Instead, too often, these spaces become another arena for discrimination and exclusion." As she spoke, Amanda could feel the energy of the crowd growing. Heads nodded in agreement, and she could hear murmurs of support. This was more than just a response to one incident. It was becoming a rallying cry for change. After Amanda finished her prepared statement, she opened the floor for questions. Reporters clamored for details, Their questions ranging from the specifics of the gallery incident to broader issues of systemic racism in the art world. One question in particular stood out. Ms. Thompson, a young reporter asked, "What would you say to those who might dismiss this as an isolated incident or an overreaction?" Amanda leaned into the microphone, her eyes scanning the crowd. "I would say this. It's easy to dismiss something when it doesn't affect you personally. But for every incident that makes the news, there are countless others that go unreported. We're not just reacting to one moment. We're shining a light on a pervasive problem that affects people every day in ways both big and small." As the press conference drew to a close, Amanda felt a surge of emotion. The support from the community was palpable, with many approaching her afterwards to share their own stories or offer assistance. Lena hugged her tightly as they stepped away from the podium. "You did it, Amanda. You really moved people." Dr. Benjamin nodded in agreement. "Legally, we're on solid ground. And publicly, you've struck a chord. This could be the start of real change." As the crowd began to disperse, Amanda noticed a group of people gathering near the gallery entrance. They held signs supporting her cause, their voices rising in a chant for justice and equality. Looking at the impromptu demonstration, Amanda realized that her personal experience had sparked something larger. What had begun as a response to one incident was rapidly evolving into a movement. The press conference wasn't an end, but a beginning. With renewed determination, Amanda turned to Lena and Dr. Benjamin. "This is just the first step," she said. "We have a lot of work ahead of us." As they left the park, the chants of the protesters echoing behind them, Amanda felt a mix of hope and resolve. The fight against discrimination would be long and challenging, but she was ready for it. The incident at the gallery had opened her eyes, and now she was determined to open the eyes of others. The journey toward true equality and inclusion in their community had just begun, and Amanda Thompson was leading the charge. As the sun set on the day of the press conference, Amanda's phone buzzed with a notification. Exhausted but still riding the wave of adrenaline from the day's events, she glanced at the screen to see a message from an unknown number. "Hello, Amanda. My name is Miguel Ramirez. I'm a local artist, and I was deeply moved by your story and your speech today. I'd like to help. Can we meet to discuss an idea I have?" Intrigued, Amanda replied, agreeing to meet Miguel the following afternoon at a local art studio. When she arrived, she found a man in his early 30s, paint-splattered jeans and a thoughtful expression on his face, waiting for her. "Amanda," Miguel greeted her warmly, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming. I've been following your work for a while, but after hearing about what happened at the gallery, I knew I had to reach out." As they settled into a pair of worn armchairs, surrounded by canvases in various stages of completion, Miguel shared his vision. "I want to organize a collective exhibition," he explained, his eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. "An exhibition where artists from diverse backgrounds can share their experiences of discrimination through their work." Amanda leaned forward, intrigued. "That sounds powerful, Miguel, but how would it work?" Miguel's words tumbled out in a rush of creative energy. "Picture this: a gallery filled with pieces that challenge perceptions, that make people uncomfortable in the best way possible. We could have paintings, sculptures, installations, even performance art. Each piece would tell a story of discrimination, but also of resilience and hope." As Miguel spoke, Amanda could already visualize the impact such an exhibition could have. It wasn't just about her experience anymore. It was about giving a platform to voices that were too often silenced. "We could invite artists from all over Sacramento," Amanda mused, her mind racing with possibilities. "Maybe even beyond. This could be a way to bring attention to discrimination in all its forms." Miguel nodded eagerly. "Exactly. And we could organize panel discussions, workshops, maybe even collaborate with local schools for educational programs." As they continued to brainstorm, Amanda felt a spark of excitement she hadn't experienced in years. This wasn't just another protest or awareness campaign. This was a chance to use art as a vehicle for social change, to touch people's hearts and minds in a way that statistics and speeches never could. "Miguel, this is brilliant," Amanda said finally, a smile spreading across her face. "But it's going to be a lot of work. Are you sure you're up for it?" Miguel's response was immediate and passionate. "Absolutely. This is why I became an artist in the first place, to make a difference, to challenge people's perceptions. With your experience as an activist and my connections in the art world, I think we could create something truly impactful." As they shook hands, sealing their newfound partnership, Amanda felt a renewed sense of purpose. The incident at the gallery had been painful, but it had led her to this moment, to this alliance with Miguel that held so much potential. "Let's do it," she said firmly. "Let's make this exhibition a reality." As Amanda left the studio, her mind was already whirling with ideas and plans. She realized that with Miguel by her side, her fight against discrimination had gained a powerful new dimension. Art had the power to move people in ways that protests and speeches sometimes couldn't. It could make the invisible visible, give form to abstract concepts of injustice and equality. She pulled out her phone to text Lena. "Just met with an artist named Miguel. We're planning something big. Call you later with details." As she walked home through the streets of Sacramento, Amanda felt a mix of excitement and anticipation. The exhibition was still just an idea, but she could already feel its potential to spark change. With Miguel's creativity and her activism, they had the chance to create something truly transformative. The road ahead would be challenging, but Amanda was ready. The fight for justice was taking on a new, colorful dimension, and she couldn't wait to see where it would lead. The weeks following Amanda's meeting with Miguel flew by in a whirlwind of activity. The small art studio that had hosted their initial meeting became their unofficial headquarters, its walls now covered with sketches, timelines, and lists of potential artists and venues. On a particularly busy afternoon, Amanda stood before a large whiteboard, marker in hand, as she addressed the growing team of volunteers and artists who had rallied to their cause. "All right, everyone," she began, her voice carrying a mix of authority and excitement. "We're 3 weeks out from the opening. Let's go over where we stand." Miguel, seated nearby, nodded and chimed in. "We've confirmed participation from 15 local artists, each with a unique perspective on discrimination. We've got painters, sculptors, photographers, and even a couple of performance artists." Amanda jotted down notes as the meeting progressed. They discussed logistics, everything from lighting and space allocation to security measures and promotional strategies. The scale of the project was daunting, but the energy in the room was palpable. As they worked through the agenda, a young artist named Jasmine raised her hand. I have something I'd like to share," she said, her voice trembling slightly. The room fell silent as Jasmine stood up. "The piece I'm working on," she began, "it's inspired by an experience I had last year. I was denied an artist residency and later found out it was because they thought my work was too ethnic for their audience." Her words hung in the air, heavy with emotion. The room was silent for a moment before erupting in a chorus of support and understanding. Amanda watched as artists began sharing their own stories, tales of galleries that wouldn't show their work, of being typecast or tokenized, of feeling like outsiders in their own field. As the sharing continued, Amanda felt a mix of sadness and determination. This was why their exhibition was so important. It wasn't just about art. It was about giving voice to these experiences, about challenging the status quo. "Thank you all for sharing," Amanda said when the room had quieted. "This is exactly why we're doing this. Your stories, your art, they have the power to open eyes and change minds." The meeting concluded with renewed energy and purpose. As the team dispersed, Amanda and Miguel stayed behind, poring over the plans one more time. "Do you think we can pull this off?" Miguel asked, a hint of worry in his voice. Amanda looked at him, then at the room around them. The sketches, the plans, the evidence of so much passion and hard work. "I do," she said firmly. "It won't be easy, but we've got something powerful here. We're not just putting on an art show. We're starting a conversation that this city needs to have." As the day of the exhibition's opening drew nearer, the pressure intensified. There were last-minute cancellations to deal with, technical issues to resolve, and a constant stream of emails and phone calls to manage. Amanda found herself working late into the night, fueled by determination and copious amounts of coffee. The night before the opening, Amanda stood alone in the gallery space. The artworks were in place, each piece a testament to resilience in the face of discrimination. As she walked through the silent room, taking in each painting, sculpture, and installation, she felt a mix of emotions wash over her. There was pride in what they had accomplished, anxiety about how it would be received, and a deep-seated hope that this exhibition could be the catalyst for real change. As she paused before a particularly striking piece, a large canvas depicting hands of different colors reaching towards each other, Amanda reflected on the journey that had brought her here. What had started as a personal experience of discrimination had grown into something much larger. It had brought together a community, sparked difficult but necessary conversations, and was now poised to challenge perceptions across the city. As she left the gallery that night, Amanda felt a sense of anticipation building. Tomorrow, they would open their doors to the public. Tomorrow, their message would be heard. Whatever happened next, she knew that they had already accomplished something important. They had turned pain into art, frustration into action, and in doing so, had taken a significant step in the ongoing fight against discrimination. The exhibition was ready. Now it was time to see how Sacramento would respond. The day of the exhibition's opening arrived with a buzz of excitement and nervous energy. Amanda stood at the entrance of the gallery, watching as the first visitors began to trickle in. The space, which had been a blank canvas just weeks ago, now pulsed with color, emotion, and powerful messages. As more people arrived, the gallery quickly filled with a diverse crowd. Art enthusiasts, activists, local politicians, and curious community members. Amanda could hear the murmur of conversations, punctuated by occasional gasps or exclamations as visitors encountered particularly impactful pieces. Near the center of the gallery, a large installation drew significant attention. It was a maze-like structure, its walls made of mirrors and opaque panels. As people navigated through it, they were confronted with statistics about discrimination, interspersed with reflections of their own faces. The piece forced visitors to see themselves as part of both the problem and the solution. Amanda made her way through the crowd, observing reactions and engaging in conversations. She overheard a group of students discussing a series of photographs depicting everyday scenes of subtle discrimination. Their animated debate about microaggressions and privilege made her smile. This was exactly the kind of dialogue they had hoped to inspire. As the evening progressed, it was time for Amanda to make her speech. She took a deep breath and stepped onto the small platform that had been set up for this purpose. The crowd quieted as she began to speak. "Welcome, everyone, to Shades of Injustice," Amanda began, her voice steady and clear. "This exhibition is born out of a personal experience of discrimination, but it has grown into something much larger. Each piece you see here tells a story of pain, of resilience, and of hope." She continued, her words gaining passion as she spoke. "Art has the power to make us see the world differently, to challenge our assumptions, and to inspire change. As you walk through this gallery tonight, I urge you to do more than just look, feel, reflect, and most importantly, ask yourself, what role do I play in perpetuating or dismantling systems of discrimination?" As Amanda concluded her speech, the room erupted in applause. She could see tears in some eyes, determined nods from others. The energy in the room was palpable, a mix of somber reflection and fired-up determination. After the speech, Amanda found herself swept up in a whirlwind of conversations. Journalists asked for interviews, community leaders offered support, and ordinary citizens shared their own stories of discrimination. It was overwhelming, but in the best possible way. As the crowd thinned and the evening wound down, Amanda found a moment of quiet near one of the exhibition's more subdued pieces, a simple canvas painted entirely black, with a small mirror at its center. As she stood there, lost in thought, she felt a presence beside her. It was Miguel. "We did it," he said softly, a smile playing on his lips. Amanda turned to him, feeling a surge of emotion. "We really did," she replied. Without thinking, she leaned in and kissed him briefly on the lips. The moment was quick, but charged with the intensity of their shared accomplishment and the connection that had grown between them over the past weeks. As they pulled apart, both slightly surprised by the sudden display of affection, Amanda felt a mix of exhilaration and uncertainty. The kiss had been unexpected, but it felt right somehow, a culmination of the passion and energy they had poured into this project together. I'm sorry," Amanda started to say, But Miguel shook his head. "Don't be," he said softly. "I think we both needed that." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the sounds of the remaining guests muted in the background. The exhibition's opening had been a success beyond their wildest dreams, and this moment of connection felt like a fitting end to an emotional evening. As they began to walk towards the exit to oversee the final closing of the gallery, Amanda felt a renewed sense of purpose. The exhibition was just the beginning. They had started a conversation, sparked a movement, and as she glanced at Miguel, she realized that perhaps they had found something personal in the midst of their public fight for justice. The night was ending, but Amanda knew that their work, and whatever was blossoming between her and Miguel, was just beginning. The fight against discrimination would continue, but now they had art, community support, and each other to fuel their efforts. In the weeks following the exhibition's opening, Amanda found herself at the center of a rapidly growing movement. The impact of Shades of Injustice had far exceeded their expectations, sparking conversations and debates across Sacramento and beyond. Local news outlets clamored for interviews, eager to discuss the exhibition and its broader implications. Amanda's calendar filled up with appearances on morning shows, radio programs, and even a segment on a national news network. Each interview provided an opportunity to amplify their message and push for concrete changes in how institutions address discrimination. One crisp morning, Amanda sat in a bustling TV studio, preparing for a live interview. As the makeup artist applied final touches, she overheard the anchors discussing the latest developments. The Norby Gallery has announced a complete overhaul of their hiring practices and security protocols, one anchor said. They're citing the Shades of Injustice exhibition as a wake-up call. Amanda couldn't help but smile. It was a small victory, but a significant one. The interview began, and Amanda found herself fielding questions about the exhibition's impact. "We're seeing a ripple effect," she explained. "Other galleries and museums are reaching out, asking for guidance on how to make their spaces more inclusive. It's not just about art anymore. It's about creating a culture of equality and respect in all public spaces." As the movement grew, so did the demands on Amanda's time. She found herself speaking at community centers, schools, and even corporate events. Each engagement was an opportunity to share her story and inspire others to take action against discrimination in their own lives. During a panel discussion at Sacramento State University, a student asked a question that stuck with Amanda. "How do we keep this momentum going? How do we ensure this isn't just a passing trend?" The question weighed on Amanda's mind as she left the campus. The movement had gained significant traction, but sustaining it would require constant effort and innovation. That evening, as she scrolled through her social media feed, Amanda noticed a trending hashtag, #ShadesOfJustice. People from all over the country were sharing their own experiences of discrimination and calling for change in their communities. The exhibition had sparked a digital movement, extending its reach far beyond Sacramento. Energized by this development, Amanda reached out to Miguel. "We need to think bigger," she told him. "What if we created a toolkit for other cities to host their own Shades of Injustice exhibitions?" Miguel loved the idea, and they spent the next few days outlining a plan to package their experience into a replicable model. The toolkit would include guidelines for selecting artists, tips for engaging with local institutions, and strategies for maximizing community impact. As the movement continued to grow, Amanda found herself increasingly in the public eye. She was invited to speak at a TED Talk, sharing her journey from a personal experience of discrimination to leading a national conversation on equality and representation in the arts. Standing on the red circular carpet, facing an audience of hundreds and knowing thousands more would watch online, Amanda felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. "Change doesn't happen in isolation," she said, her voice strong and clear. "It requires all of us to open our eyes, to speak up, and to take action. Art has the power to make the invisible visible, to challenge our preconceptions, and to inspire us to create a more just world." The talk was met with a standing ovation, and as Amanda stepped off the stage, her phone buzzed with messages of support and requests for collaboration from across the country. However, as the movement gained momentum, Amanda began to feel the strain of its rapid growth. The constant interviews, speaking engagements, and strategic planning left her exhausted. She found herself working late into the night, fueled by coffee and the fear that if she slowed down, the movement might lose its momentum. One evening, as she sat in her apartment surrounded by piles of papers and half-empty coffee cups, Amanda paused to reflect. The movement had grown beyond her wildest dreams, but at what cost? She wondered if she was still connecting with the very people she set out to help, or if she had become too caught up in the whirlwind of media attention and national recognition. As she pondered these questions, Amanda realized that the next phase of the movement would require not just growth, but also depth. It was time to refocus on the grassroots efforts that had started it all, to ensure that in the midst of national attention, they didn't lose sight of the local communities they sought to empower. With this realization, Amanda began to plan her next steps. The movement had gained significant traction, but the real work of creating lasting change was just beginning. As she looked out her window at the Sacramento skyline, Amanda felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. The fight against discrimination was far from over, but they had sparked a conversation that couldn't be ignored. Now, it was time to turn that conversation into concrete, lasting change. As the movement continued to gain momentum, Amanda found herself increasingly stretched thin. The constant demands of interviews, speaking engagements, and strategic planning left little time for personal reflection or connection with the grassroots efforts that had initially inspired her. One afternoon, Amanda met with Lena at their favorite cafe, hoping to reconnect with her longtime friend and ally. The atmosphere between them, however, was tense from the moment they sat down. "Amanda, we need to talk," Lena began, her voice laced with concern and frustration. "I feel like we're losing sight of what we set out to do." Amanda bristled at the criticism. "What do you mean? We've made incredible progress. The exhibition has sparked a national conversation." Lena leaned forward, her eyes intense. "But at what cost? We're spending more time in TV studios than in community centers. When was the last time you actually spoke with the people we're supposed to be helping?" The words hit Amanda hard. She wanted to argue, to defend the importance of their high-profile advocacy, but a part of her knew Lena had a point. "We can't ignore the bigger picture, Lena," Amanda countered, her voice rising. "This movement has the potential to create systemic change. Isn't that what we've always wanted?" Their discussion quickly escalated into a heated argument, with both women passionately defending their perspectives. As their voices rose, other cafe patrons began to stare, adding to Amanda's discomfort. "You've changed, Amanda," Lena said finally, her voice filled with disappointment. "I'm not sure I recognize the friend who started this fight anymore." As Lena stormed out of the cafe, Amanda sat there, stunned and conflicted. Had she really lost touch with her roots? Had the allure of national recognition blinded her to the grassroots work that still needed to be done? Feeling emotionally drained, Amanda decided to take a walk to clear her head. As she wandered through a nearby park, she was so lost in thought that she almost didn't notice the man approaching her until he spoke. "Miss Thompson? Amanda?" She looked up, startled to see Mark, the security guard from the Norby Gallery incident that had started it all. Her first instinct was to turn away, the memory of that humiliating experience still fresh in her mind. Mark held up his hands in a placating gesture. "Please, I just want to talk. I owe you an apology." Curiosity overcame her initial reluctance, and Amanda found herself listening as Mark explained his actions that day. "I was wrong," he said, his voice heavy with remorse. "I let my own biases and fears dictate my actions. But your movement, your exhibition, it's opened my eyes. I've been doing a lot of soul-searching, and I realized I need to be part of the solution, not the problem." As Mark spoke about his own journey of self-reflection and the steps he'd taken to educate himself about unconscious bias, Amanda felt a mix of emotions. Part of her wanted to hold on to her anger, to reject his apology outright. But another part recognized the importance of allowing space for growth and change. "I appreciate your apology, Mark," Amanda said carefully, "but you have to understand the impact of your actions. It's not just about that one day. It's about a lifetime of experiences like that for many people." Mark nodded solemnly. "I know, and I want to do better. I've been volunteering at a community center, trying to learn and give back. I was wondering if there might be a way I could contribute to your movement." Amanda hesitated, torn between the desire to welcome an ally and the fear of compromising the integrity of their cause. The conversation with Mark had forced her to confront the complexities of forgiveness and redemption in the context of their movement. As she walked home that evening, Amanda's mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. The argument with Lena had shaken her confidence, while the unexpected encounter with Mark had challenged her notions of growth and change. She realized that leading this movement meant navigating not just external opposition, but also internal conflicts and ethical dilemmas. How could she balance the need for high-level advocacy with grassroots connection? How could she make space for personal growth and redemption without compromising the movement's principles? As the sun set over Sacramento, Amanda knew she had some serious soul-searching to do. The path forward wasn't clear, but she was determined to find a way to stay true to her original mission while adapting to the movement's growing scale and complexity. The personal conflicts she faced were, in many ways, a microcosm of the larger societal issues they were trying to address, and resolving them would be crucial to the movement's continued success and authenticity. The tension that had been building within the movement finally reached its boiling point on a sweltering Sacramento afternoon. Amanda stood at the forefront of a large crowd gathered in front of the Norby Gallery, the very place where her journey had begun months ago. The air was thick with anticipation and the low rumble of hundreds of voices. This demonstration was meant to be the culmination of their efforts, a peaceful but powerful show of solidarity against discrimination in all its forms. Activists from across the country had traveled to join them, and the crowd was a diverse tapestry of faces and voices united in their cause. Amanda gripped the megaphone tightly, her palms sweaty not just from the heat, but from the weight of the moment. As she prepared to address the crowd, she caught sight of Lena in the distance, their recent argument still a painful memory. Despite their differences, Lena had shown up, a silent nod to the importance of their shared cause. "Today, we stand together," Amanda began, her voice carrying over the assembled masses. "Not just as individuals who have faced discrimination, but as a community united in our demand for change." As she spoke, outlining their demands for systemic reforms and increased accountability, Amanda noticed a commotion at the edge of the crowd. A group of counter-protesters had arrived, their angry voices rising above the cheers of support. "This is our city too," one of them shouted. "Stop playing the victim." The atmosphere shifted palpably, tension crackling through the air like electricity. Amanda tried to maintain control, urging calm and unity, but the situation was rapidly escalating. Supporters and opponents began to clash verbally, their confrontations threatening to turn physical. In the midst of the chaos, Amanda locked eyes with Miguel, who was trying to mediate between two arguing factions. They shared a look of concern. This was not how they had envisioned this day unfolding. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the square. Someone had thrown a bottle, shattering a gallery window. The sound seemed to shatter the last vestiges of peace along with it. Panic spread through the crowd as people began to push and shove. Amanda found herself at the center of the storm, trying desperately to regain control. "Please," she shouted into the megaphone. "This is not who we are. We're here for peaceful change." But her words were drowned out by the cacophony of angry voices and the wail of approaching police sirens. The situation was spiraling out of control, and Amanda felt a crushing sense of responsibility. Had their movement inadvertently fueled this conflict rather than fostering understanding? As she tried to make her way through the surging crowd, Amanda stumbled. For a terrifying moment, she felt herself falling, the press of bodies threatening to overwhelm her. But then, strong hands gripped her arms, pulling her to safety. To her surprise, it was Mark, the former security guard, who had come to her aid. "Are you all right?" he shouted over the noise, genuine concern in his eyes. Before Amanda could respond, she saw a masked figure rushing towards them, arm raised to strike. Without hesitation, Mark positioned himself between Amanda and the attacker, taking the brunt of the blow. The world seemed to slow down in that moment. Amanda watched in horror as Mark crumpled to the ground, the reality of the situation crashing down on her. This was not the change they had fought for. This chaos, this violence, it was the antithesis of everything their movement stood for. As the police began to intervene, trying to disperse the crowd and restore order, Amanda knelt beside Mark, checking if he was okay. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on her. The man who had once discriminated against her was now her protector. "Why?" she asked him, helping him to sit up. "After everything that happened, why would you help me?" Mark winced, touching a bruise forming on his cheek. "Because you were right," he said softly, "about everything. And I want to be part of the solution, not the problem." As the chaos around them began to subside, Amanda felt a profound shift in her understanding of their movement. The lines between ally and opponent, between right and wrong, were not as clear-cut as she had once believed. The path to true change was more complex and nuanced than she had imagined. Looking out at the scene before her, the mix of anger, fear, and confusion on faces both familiar and strange, Amanda realized that their greatest challenge lay not in confronting their opponents, but in finding common ground. The real work of their movement was just beginning, and it would require not just passion and determination, but also empathy, understanding, and the willingness to bridge seemingly insurmountable divides. As the sun began to set on this tumultuous day, Amanda knew that the future of their movement hung in the balance. The choices they made in the aftermath of this chaos would define not just their cause, but the very fabric of their community. With this realization came a renewed sense of purpose and a deeper understanding of the complexities of social change. As the chaos of the demonstration subsided, Amanda found herself in a small conference room at the local police station. The events of the day had left her physically and emotionally drained. Across from her sat Mark, the former security guard, holding an ice pack to his bruised face. "I never got a chance to thank you properly," Amanda said, breaking the tense silence. "You put yourself at risk to protect me." "Why?" Mark lowered the ice pack, his eyes meeting hers with a mixture of pain and determination. "There's something I need to tell you, Amanda. Something I should have said a long time ago." He took a deep breath before continuing. "My mother, she was an activist too. She fought against discrimination her whole life, much like you're doing now. I grew up watching her struggle, watching her face the same kind of prejudice and hatred we saw today." Amanda listened, stunned by this unexpected revelation. "When I became a security guard, I thought I was protecting people. But somewhere along the way, I lost sight of what really mattered. I became part of the system my mother had fought against." Mark's voice cracked with emotion. "The day I confronted you at the gallery, I wasn't just following protocol. I was acting out of fear. Fear of losing my job, fear of not fitting in. I betrayed everything my mother stood for." As Mark spoke, Amanda felt a shift in her perception. The man she had seen as a symbol of discrimination was revealing himself to be something far more complex. A person caught between conflicting loyalties, struggling with his own identity and place in the world. "After your exhibition, after seeing the impact of your movement, I couldn't ignore the truth anymore," Mark continued. "I've been trying to make amends, to honor my mother's memory by supporting causes like yours. But I never had the courage to approach you directly, until today." Amanda sat back, processing this information. "Mark, I don't know what to say. This changes so much of how I've been thinking about our movement, about the people we're trying to reach." Mark leaned forward, a spark of hope in his eyes. "I want to help, Amanda, not just as an ally, but as someone who has connections within the system. I know people in security firms across the city, in museums and galleries. I can help you implement real changes from the inside." As they continued to talk, mapping out possibilities for collaboration, Amanda felt a renewed sense of purpose. This unexpected alliance represented everything their movement stood for: the power of dialogue, the possibility of change, and the importance of seeing beyond labels and first impressions. When they finally left the police station, stepping out into the cool night air, Amanda turned to Mark. "You know, this doesn't erase what happened at the gallery. We still have a long way to go." Mark nodded solemnly. "I know, but isn't that what your movement is all about? Giving people the chance to learn, to grow, to be better." Amanda couldn't help but smile. "You're right, and I think we've just taken a big step in that direction." As they parted ways, Amanda felt a mix of emotions: hope, uncertainty, and a deep sense of responsibility. The events of the day had shown her both the challenges and the possibilities of their movement. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but with unexpected allies like Mark, and the lessons learned from today's conflicts, she felt more prepared than ever to face whatever came next. Amanda pulled out her phone and dialed Lena's number. It was time to bridge another gap, to heal another rift. As the phone rang, she looked up at the stars, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The fight against injustice was far from over, but today had shown her that change was possible, often in the most unexpected ways. The surprising twist in Mark's story had not only changed the course of their movement, but had also reinforced a fundamental truth: that the journey towards equality and understanding is often complex, filled with unexpected alliances and opportunities for growth. As Amanda prepared to share this development with her team, she knew that their movement was entering a new phase, one that would require even more empathy, wisdom, and openness to change.